Good evening, IEA members and others who have joined the webinar. This webinar is organized by Institute of Internal Auditors Madras chapter under the aegis of Institute of Internal Auditors India. This is a very current topic, contemporary subject on which we have an eminent speaker. The topic is Cybersecurity and Internal Audit in the New World Order. The speaker is Mr. P.K. Ranganathan. He is a past president of IAA Madras chapter, and he is a chartered accountant, BCom distinction from RKM Vivekananda College, Chennai, chartered accountant and cost and management accountant, and diploma in operations and management audit of Sysma Consulting Inc. USA. He is presently engaged with Cybersecurity Systems Private Limited, a software company engaged in cyber security products and services as Chief Financial Officer since March 2019, taking care of finance, accounts, legal, secretarial, administration, and IT, with advisory role in business strategy and planning. Professional journey include worked with Ashok Leyland since November 1985, nearly 34 years experience in almost all functions in finance and internal audit, and held leadership positions since the last 20 years, and also handled secretarial and legal functions for a brief period. Leadership roles in Ashok Leyland include worked from July 2016 till February 2019 at the AL's Foundry Division as Head of Finance, Chief Financial Officer. Just prior to this, functioned as Vice President Internal Audit, Risk Management and Information Security during October 2011 to July 2016. He was CFO of two group companies, listed entities of AL Group, Lanka Ashok Leyland, Colombo in 97-98, and Hinduja Foundries in 2012 and again from July 2016. Prior to joining AL, functioned as audit manager in a leading CA firm in Chennai for 3 years from January 83 to November 85. Yes, obtained a number of awards and accreditations. Awarded Financial Leadership Award in December 2012 by Institute of Public Enterprises, Hyderabad, for his role as CFO in providing financial leadership in Hinduja Foundries Limited. Under his leadership, Ashok Leyland achieved the Best Firm of the Year award in 2014-15 for enterprise risk management practices, awarded by CNBC TV 18 and ICICI Lombard Insurance Company. Also under his leadership, AL has achieved the Internal Audit Practice of the Year award for 2015-16 under the aegis of Genpact India and Inventicon Business Intelligence. He was placed in top 3 CAEs in India during 2014-15 and 15-16. Achieved ISO 27001-2013 version certification in 2015 for information security function of AL, the first automotive company in India to achieve this distinction. Number of affiliations, like President of Madras chapter of IAA in the year 2016-17, member of the Internal Audit and Risk Management Committee of ASSOCHAM, member and co-convener of the subcommittee of AASB of Institute of Chartered Accountants on revision of guidance note on internal financial controls, and co-opted member of the Committee on Professional Accountants in Business and Industry. Regular speaker in forums like ASSOCHAM, CIA, MCCI, MMA on a variety of topics from finance, governance, taxation, management, internal audit, etc. Recognized speaker in Dun& Bradstreet, Transformance, and Programmic Asia in their series of CFO summit meetings, enclaves on variety of themes and topics. He was awarded ACE Mentor by Ashok Leyland for 2006 and 2007 for his mentoring of graduate engineers of Ashok Leyland during these years. With this illustrious career introduction about PK Ranganathan, I will now request PKR to proceed with this presentation. Over to PKR.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Good evening to all of you, my esteemed members of the Institute of Internal Auditors. It's a pleasure to speak on this occasion in the forum of Institute of Internal Auditors. The subject we have today is a very contemporary subject, as what Mr. Vidyadharan said, cybersecurity and its context for internal audit in the new world order. I would just start my program now with a quote from former managing director of McKinsey. About 11 years ago, he made one statement. I quote, "For some organizations, near-term survival is the only agenda item. Others are peering through the fog of uncertainty, thinking about how to position themselves once the crisis has passed and things return to normal is a major task for every organization. The question is, what will normal look like? While no one can say how long the crisis will last, what we find on the other side will not look like normal of recent years." These words were written by Ian Davis, former managing director of McKinsey. They ring true today, but if anything, they understate the reality the world is currently passing through. We have seen the last 2 decades, 20 years, say from 2000 to 2020, the world has gone through multitude of crises, multitude of upheavals, and both financially, economically, politically, and whatnot. Starting from .com of the 2000, the financial scandals starting from Enron of the 2000 till the Nirav Modi case in India, and the various cybersecurity related attacks starting from 2007 when the Target company was attacked in US, and followed by several other cyber related attacks. The world has witnessed quite a number of crises. Each crisis has meant quite a lot. Particularly the 2008 financial crisis meant to destabilize the globe, uproot the globe in terms of the financial systems and processes. But however, thanks to the resiliency and thanks to the innovative resurrection measures taken by different administrations, different governments, the financial collapse of 2008 dissipated maybe in about 3 to 4 years, but it had its own lingering effects. Come 2012, we had quite a number of other events in the form of cyber related issues, data privacy related issues, and come 2015 to 2017, we had other pandemics like the dengue or the SARS and the things like that. And now the world has been witnessing for the last about 9 months unprecedented scale, which has never been witnessed so far in the form of the COVID pandemic. It has totally uprooted the financial system, the political administration, the economic stability of every country, barring perhaps one or two which are naive to these attacks or crises. Most of the countries across the globe have been hit very hard by the pandemic. In this context, while the financial systems and the other administrative processes are taking time in terms of their stability and establishment or re-establishment, one thing which is continuously going on across the globe is that most of the hackers and the cyber criminals are active during this period to make it very clear that when you are in crisis, I am in pleasure. This is the way the cyber related attacks are going on across the globe. Given this context, what an amount of resurrection measures, both through financial systems or through the technology which we are going to take. The other part of it, namely the cyber security in terms of the continuity of your IT systems, continuity of whatever data you have got in your servers, in your cloud systems, are under quite a lot of jeopardy, quite a lot of danger, and perhaps may become extinct if you are not really keen to protect them. In this context, I am very glad to present this presentation. What we need to look at is the organizations that are affected by the changes in external environment, more particularly by the COVID-19 pandemic, and companies are stretched financially and operationally. Past major events such as the terror attacks in beginning of this century, the hacks of critical infrastructure in the last 20 years, the major data leaks that have happened, the global financial market collapse, have all impacted many countries and the companies that are not prepared. As most of our systems and processes depend on digital technologies, it leaves us open to cyber attacks, as I have already mentioned. We need to be prepared for the next external change that may leave us vulnerable to an attack. In this presentation, I will bring out some of the ways to increase our cyber resilience. I will be able to present across what operational technology and information technology needs to do to be holistic, and just as important is the situation awareness on the ground and common mechanism to bring to management attention when things go wrong or is likely to go wrong. In the presentation, some of the best practices of cybersecurity and how internal audit would need to address would also be covered. The presentation walkthrough is something like this. I will set the context as to what the global new world order is emerging, what are the types of global disruptions, and how the COVID pandemic has disrupted the whole globe, and what are the new normals post these collapses or post the COVID-19, and what type of cyber threats are emerging as a major conflict. And during this period of pandemic, what are the type of cyber security attacks that have happened, and what internal audit would need to do in terms of building trust, in terms of their roles in cyber security defense and countermeasures, what should be their key focus areas. And this will be the journey of my presentation. If I have to set the context, very important is that in a world which I described earlier is dotted by lot of crises that have happened, four major issues emanate as critical to a cyber resilience or a cyber stability. One, the strategy and the reputation of the organization and how it is impacted through various forces like brand, globalization, competition, organization model, the transformation that is taking place in the organization, the regulatory and the statutory measures that are encompassing the corporates and the business across the world in the form of environment, ethics, safety, sustainability, assurance, etc. The operation related concerns are the one like innovation, the cost, the customers, outsourcing, the HR or the people related measures, and sustainability related issues. And lastly, the financial, more particularly the financial systems covering the market, the credit, the capital, the cost, and the cash flow. All these things are interrelated to a cyber world, in the sense that your information technology is intricately integrated to all the four dimensions. Given this context, we find the whole globe to be in type of a disruption due to various factors like external factors, regulatory pressures, the COVID-19 pandemic, which we have been seeing, which has uprooted this supply chain logistics, workforce and liquidity related regulations, creating demand uncertainties. We also see certain amount of geopolitical factors, like the way most of the nations are now impacted, but like what it is happening in India, what it is happening in Russia, China, Lebanon, and other countries of the world. The trade war between most important nations of the globe, China and the US, has been one of the major reasons for the economic twist and the economic imbalances right now going through, and the environmental factors and the sustainability related issues, more particularly emanating from climate changes, the financial markets volatility due to forex related issues, market expansion and the competition related pressures, and lastly the internal factors impacting the business itself. These are all the context in which we are living today. Most of the crises which we have seen in the last 2 decades can be dotted into all these things, and the world which has been going through turmoils, collapses, crises, upheavals, and any type of disturbance or imbalances have all been met by the different nations each in its own way. Given this, in today's context, we are facing COVID pandemic as the major and the most important crisis, which is being tackled by every economy, every nation across the globe in its own merit and in their own spirit. It is now the biggest global event and challenge that is posing eternally difficult to manage but elusive at the same time. As such, it is changing the human attitudes, behaviors, forcing every organization to respond in some way or other to ensure that their business is continued, their operational systems are viable, their technology systems are not broken and penetrated, and ensure that they make their business sound and stable. But what type of response we need to do will be the major stake as we go through. I thought of making this, what is the impact of COVID across the globe? I thought of making a small snapshot. This is being taken from John Hopkins, which is the authorized website for the corona virus impact analysis. As of date, across the globe, this was taken on 22nd August at around 11 p.m. 23 million people are impacted, with US alone with about 5.6 million, Brazil about 3.5 million, India almost touching 3 million, and countries like Russia, South Africa, Peru, and Mexico are having its own contribution in terms of the impacted cases, and global deaths has crossed about 800,000, the topmost being in US. So the scale of the pandemic is huge. The human loss is something which we have never witnessed in the last 20 years. And more importantly, the economic loss, the type of technology related issues it has created is huge, very huge. And in terms of a business challenge, if I have to plot what exactly it would mean to every organization, it is something like this: disrupting the regular revenue streams, creating enormous supply challenges, the selling and general administration expenses of each corporate, each entity is increasing manifold. And very, very important is the fact that pandemic has impacted the liquidity of every company across the globe. That is which is today the most important factor which is impacting the global growth as well as the resurrection and resumption process. And of course, there are other intangible losses like goodwill of the company getting lost, inorganic growth not getting possible, and new products or market channels not getting into place. These are all other factors which are impacting the largest part of the EBITDA or the capital efficiency of each organization. In terms of the impacted industry, as I said earlier, it has impacted every industry. No industry is spared. Aerospace, communication, high-tech, banking, capital markets, insurance, travel. In fact, travel, health sector, hospitality sector are one of the most impacted. Automobile, retail. Of course, retail is one which is, though impacted, is coming back to jumping back in terms of spirits up, and of course, chemicals and other consumer durables. So every industry is being impacted. The pandemic is already changing the way of life. For example, technology is the only mantra which is now the most used across the globe. We get everything done through technology, payment through technology, our material purchases through technology, our actions through technology, our office work from home is also through the technology mode. Our communication with the rest of the world is also only through the technology. Therefore, the major impact which this pandemic has created is the way in which it has brought technology as the mainstay for the function during the last 6 months of this pandemic, and how resilient, how strong, how fundamentally integrated your system is. That determines the way in which you will be able to ensure the security of your information technology and data privacy. Given this, business are re-evaluating the existing assumptions as to how they need to operate. Such assumptions arise from people in terms of collaboration, in terms of operating models of the companies, in terms of ensuring that how the corporate operational processes are carried out, in terms of the support functions, how the specialists in each organization are able to provide support, whether in-house or external, and what type of presence in the marketplace each entity would be able to make, and how across the globe the people are able to respond. This is the new normal that is getting in place and has got in place also. Having given this, what is that it has created as an impact on the workforce? Very important. If I have to give you, there are 8 different buckets in terms of the impact on workforce this COVID pandemic has created. One, on the information governance, the way in which we are taking up the information, we are passing the information, we are generating the information, we are retaining the information. Information governance, and more particularly by the workforce, is one of the topmost priority during this COVID pandemic. Healthcare and health of the individual workforce. Digital and circular economy creation, in the way that our payments are digital, our commerce is digital, our way of life is digital, our communication is digital. Therefore, how we behave in this digital and circular economy decides the competence and success of the workforce. Public finance and civil protection. Again, most of the civil administrative measures are now made in the online. For COVID, if you have to apply for exemption or an e-pass, everything is now facilitated by the touch of a button. But you may not know when you press your Aadhaar number or your ration card number or etc. how many hackers are waiting to get into your number and hack your privacy through that, we may not really know. And organizations are looking at now going through the advanced manufacturing processes, and supply chain again going through a technology enabled process, and lastly lifestyle is more on technology enabled. And what we need to look at is how we protect our information assets, how we protect our strategies and operations, and lastly what type of socio-economic impact it is going to create. So this is the most important aspect of the pandemic in terms of the impact on technology on the workforce. So having said that, what the new world order is emerging now. In terms of digital platforms, we see organizations striving to achieve digital capabilities and flexibilities. B2B, business to commerce, being the most important and the most fundamental ecosystem that is now in place, is becoming a huge enabler of dynamic and robust digital value chains across the globe. Manufacturing, supply chains are enormously becoming nimble-footed, and financial services, energy and utilities are emerging mostly on the digital platforms. And then we become a virtual century model. A virtual century means everything is done through the remote model. Workplace is getting shifted, digital currencies and digital identity, digital delivery systems are taking place, education and learning becoming virtual, and virtual tourism and entertainment giving way to location-based services. This is the new world order we are seeing. And digitalization and digitally connected world, broadband and 5G becoming inevitable allies of the human existence and normal daily lives. We need, without broadband or without a 5G enabled work system, we are not able to go through our daily lives. And for organizations, artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, IoTs, they have become inevitable because today the manufacturing processes are becoming nimble-footed, technology-enabled. Civic services, as I said earlier, are going through a process of technology-enabled. Given this, we have seen that is a digital platform going through technology, virtual century, and the digitalization and digitally enabled or connected world all lead to very important, as the universe is going digital, cybersecurity becomes the single most and critical threat factor, leading to business, government and humans sitting on seat edge due to operational and hacking vulnerabilities. This is going to be the main topic of the new world order, or the main subject matter of the new world order. And I would like to just bring across one great book which I read during my COVID days, COVID-19, The Great Reset, written by Klaus Schwab and Thierry Mellare. This book fundamentally gives three important criteria or important aftermath. One, digitalization will be the fuel for all business models henceforth to come through. There will be demand for more information security, cyber security as the economy, digital economy grows. And a cyber resilient approach is the only way by which you can ensure sustainability of the humans, sustainability of the enterprise, sustainability of the government in this new world order. Having said this, I move to my second part, namely how cybersecurity is becoming significant in the new world order. This is the century for cyber hackers and cyber attackers. Cybercrime damages, which were predicted to be about 6 trillion by 2021, is moving from 3 trillion, which was in 2015, almost doubled in 6 years. That is to say that the cost of the cybercrime damages is increasing manifold every year, and if we do not protect our systems, protect our data, we will end up the loser. Cyber attacks, there are estimated 8.4 billion devices targeted by cyber criminals in 2017, and it is almost about 12 billion devices in 2020. A report by Poorman Institute estimates that the chances of experiencing a data breach as of date amount to 1:4. That is, every 1 in 4 devices is sure to get an attack. My device is not an exception. Your device is not an exception. Chances of cyber attack, something like every 39 seconds, a cyber attack is happening across the globe. Since 2013 to till date, 3.8 million records have been stolen every single day on an average. These are not something like a euphoric fact or euphoric data. They are based on accurate surveys done by different organizations. The average cost of a data breach is estimated to exceed 150 million for the year 2020, not by 2020, for the year 2020 on an average. Therefore, we can see the type of impact the cyber breach or a cyber attack is causing across the globe. Not any one enterprise is accepted in this process. How often does the cyber attack occur? Yeah, as more specialists join the ranks, malware is being launched more vigorously than ever before. More important is that there are 5 shocking cybersecurity statistics to tell you why you need to be aware. One, before that I would just say the clock school, which I said already, a hacker attacks the computers with internet access every 39 seconds on an average, affecting 1 in 3 Americans every year. Very important. And the non-secure usernames and passwords you use give attackers more chances of success. 43% of the cyber attacks target small business. 64% of the companies have experienced web-based attacks. 62% of the experienced phishing and social engineering attacks. 59% of the companies experience malicious code and botnets. 51% of the companies have experienced DOS, denial of service attack. Since 2013, as I said, 3.8 million records have been stolen. 75% of the healthcare industry has been infected with malware over the last 1 year. A study examined 700 healthcare organizations in US alone, including the medical treatment facilities, health insurance agencies, having been impacted by cyber attack. 95% of the cybersecurity breaches are due to human error. Very important. And most of them are caused by people who are inside the organization. To end, I would like to quote from the former president and CEO of IBM, Ginny Rometty. She said, cybercrime is the greatest threat to every company in the world. And she was right. During the next 5 years, cybercrime may become the greatest threat to every person, every human being, every place, and every government, every enterprise across the world. With the evolving technology becoming or rather giving space for evolving cyber attacks, we become targets, easy targets for the cyber criminals and the hackers at any time. And providing advanced cyber training and education solutions to your employees, to your colleagues, to your own people at home will be very important in the time of continued cyber attacks. Let us see just very shortly as to how much of the attacks have happened during this pandemic. VPN vulnerable attacks has been very predominant in the US during the last 4 months since pandemic spread out in US. A CISA advisory dated July 15 says that so much of installations have been impacted. A new vulnerability codenamed CVE 2020-1451 affecting Moxa, EDR, etc., has impacted. And this VPN vulnerability, which is through the remote access, which is being predominantly used in the USA by the work from home executives, provide quite an amount of vulnerability in terms of its impact and reach. Data breaches, I have included for the one relating to 2016 UA presidential elections, which is becoming a talk of the town even today. The Marriott data breach, which happened on 31st March, 500 million guest data were stolen. The British Airways credit card breach, which happened in 2018, has again happened very recently. Attacks on government systems, Texas government agencies have been affected offline. Louisiana, these are all American from the government of US cyber public service announcement. Most of the cyber attacks have happened pre and post COVID, that is from the start and until now. Who are active during this period? There are certain criminal gangs trained and tutored for this purpose. There are certain nation states, state-sponsored cyber crimes are happening. There are sometimes thrill seekers who just have the pleasure of getting into the systems and architecture of others. Suppose they find that somebody is passing through their search process, certain thrill seekers attack such systems. And most importantly, activists, individuals or groups who are not pleased with how the individuals or organizations are handling the pandemic. This is also growing. So during this pandemic, we are seeing four different type of criminals, and nation-sponsored crimes are happening not only in the US, across the globe, not to mention only the US. What type of attacks? Phishing, SMSing, that is through SMS message, malicious websites, a message leading you to a malicious website, malicious apps being circulated either through a WhatsApp message or through a mail, and making you get into such messages or such apps, so that leads you away into different questions, different answers, asking you to open up your bank account involuntarily, and they loot your bank accounts. DDoS, as I said, denial of delivery of services, and disinformation, wrong information. Coronavirus pure phish. This is one thing which has emerged during as a unique phishing virus that has emerged. This particular phish has a double barrel, a malicious link and misinformation about the COVID pandemic. You will be tempted to look into this, but at the same time, you will move away from your normal work, and this will lead you into certain other deep-rooted areas where you would have never engaged yourself earlier. And fake FAQs about phishing messages. This is another type of link-based security threat that has emerged. More particularly, this will look into how you, your family, or your friends are looking into your personal data systems, and where you are at the weaker moment, they will supply you with certain amount of phishing messages, and in the form of frequently asked questions, and lead you to deepening crisis. Message sometimes as if it is a message from your own CEO, certain amount of mail messages coming through CEO fish. This is also happening across the globe. Impersonating. For example, recently certain impersonating messages in the form of Bill Gates, in the form of Warren Buffett, and every other, even Mr. Narendra Modi, all these emerged during the phishing attack, where whatever, as if they are contributing to certain noble causes or philanthropic activities, forcing you to contribute and thereby swindling the money out. So this is impersonating public health agencies. And lastly, malicious text messages in the form of no poverty of newly designed attacks messages, which states mostly from Canada, PC opters. I mean, again, there are certain amount of differentiation that is happening in these messages, and some more in the form of infection maps, asking you to touch a particular spot in a particular country in the map, and thereby leading you to certain other inevitable interactions. Malicious mobile apps. All these are the type of COVID related attacks that have happened, and therefore it becomes a very important for every organization to protect yourself. Be careful. I mean, these are all messages, not holy motherhood statements, but very specific messages. Whenever such message comes, please stay calm. Social engineering often preys on our fear and anxiety. Very important. Suppose if there is a message that your bank account is being hacked, please never get into certain amount of any amount of fear or anxiety. Look into it, make some verbal communication with the people concerned, and ensure that whether they are real or fake. Visit only trusted sites for COVID related information like Johns Hopkins Institute, WHO sponsored institutes. Do not get into any type of philanthropic or foundation based information. They are all likely to be phishing sites or deeply hacking sites. Be careful in installing new apps, which is very important, on your smartphone or on your tablet. These are some of the protective measures which we need to take. Having said this, what the summary in terms of a cybersecurity posing threat in the pandemic would lead to poisoning attacks, sophisticated ransomware, deep fake audio and video messages, spoof accounts, nation or state attacks, zero-day exploits, insider threats, DDoS threats. We have seen all these things. So having said about the world order emanating from the various crises and the pandemic, followed by the type of cyber attacks that have happened in all these crises, more particularly from pandemic, we now look into how to protect our IT systems. Who will be the protector of the IT systems? What could be a possible role for internal audit in this context of cybersecurity becoming a major threat, not only due to pandemic, but due to various other reasons that have been existing even pre-pandemic. But who will be the person who can save us? One important thing we all need to bear in mind is it is the organization, it is the individual, it is the government that will need to take care of itself. That is primary. Then what becomes the role of internal audit? Internal audit in a pandemic-ridden world will need to build trust. In an uncertain world, internal audit will be the bridge between the organization and the security providers. how internal audit can be the building trust model is what we are going to see in the coming slides. One important thing which I want to mention across to all the audience here is that very recently, just about 10 days back or 15 days back, Productivity came with one startling revelation that internal audit of today is ill-equipped for technology-related next-generation audit models. This is a very disturbing statement. I am not beginning my presentation on internal audits building trust with a negative statement, but this is a caution. Very important is that cybersecurity is not a subject which is easily traceable in books or traceable from the university guides. Cybersecurity is one which we need to experience, learn, and that is the only way. Therefore, the type of interaction, the type of skill set, and the type of talent which internal audit will need to process in terms of a cybersecurity advisory or a cybersecurity testing process or cybersecurity evaluation process would be certain amount of technical information laden. At the same time, it will have to ensure that they are on the top of the subject in terms of providing the right message to the organization in terms of A, building trust, B, in terms of the type of solution that will fix the problem of a cyber attack, and B, in terms of, C, in terms of evaluating how the current solutions are efficiently and effectively working. Therefore, this particular question, cybersecurity, is internal audit ready, is a very important introspection. Everyone will need to look into more thoroughly and more exhaustively as we go along. What it means for internal audit. Cybersecurity and the potential for cyber threats to disrupt core operations and damage brand reputation represents the third most critical risk for board members and C-suite executives worldwide, according to Productivity in a 2008 executive perspective study. And as I said, in the very recent study of 2020, they have made it very elaborate that cybersecurity is the most important topic for internal audit, and unfortunately, internal audit is not very much equipped to get into a technical or a technology-ridden subject. Therefore, in this context, it is very important that how we work along with the CIOs, CFOs, and CISOs of the organization will define the context and the role of the internal audit. As we go along, I would like to say that there are, in the initial phase, internal audit will need to look at cyber risk management as a potential area for delving into what they can do. In terms of a cybersecurity risk management, internal audit would certainly need to look into some of the building blocks which I have already said, namely how the remote working and time factors related to remote working are exactly working in the organization, how the IT risk policies and procedures have been built in the company, and how they support the management in terms of the right process and right procedure. Undertaking surveillance measures through data whenever any data transmission for seamless flow is happening across the organization, and in terms of the cyber policy implementation. Also, the role of internal audit will also be ensure that how the access control measures in the organizations are working. They cannot define or do an access control measure, but internal audit can take up surveillance evaluation of the access control measures, whether they are working efficiently. In terms of innovation, enable the organization to choose the right cybersecurity framework. Along with the CISO, look at what would be the right type of framework. There are different type of framework which have come up. The NSST, which being the most premier, internal audit's role would be to be innovative in this regard. Identifying critical areas of cyber attacks, that is, in the past use cases, what has actually happened across the globe in a likable situation to this company, and how we can find out similar areas of penetration or similar areas of attack possibilities and advise the management in an innovative way. And as I said earlier, from a remote working possibility, find out what check measures will need to be instituted. So in an innovation and cyber risk management perspective, the internal audit's role is very well charted. It is possible and they can do this. And we all know that every organization will have a 3-line of defense. The first line of defense being the business and the IT functions. The second line of defense being the risk management functions. The third is the internal audit. So given this, what is the role of internal audit in a 3-line of defense? One important aspect that comes to everyone's mind would be how the role of internal audit in terms of profiling the cyber attacks or the data losses, what type of regulatory expectations are there, and how you can advise the organization in terms of integrating such regulatory expectations into the policies and procedures. These are very critical in the role of internal audit for a 3rd line of defense. More of it we will see as we scale across the slides. In the context of emerging cyber security issues, I find for internal audit there are 4 specific buckets. One is, how do you evaluate the business goals and strategies? In terms of understanding the business goals and strategies, how the cyber systems, technology systems, the manufacturing technology, the service technology, the human source related technologies, your financial systems have all been set in the organization. How would you like to conduct a cyber attack related evaluation in the process? This is the first fundamental bucket which internal audit would need to look into. Understand the previous cyber deficiencies that have happened in the organizations and how you can devise, with reference to the business goal and strategies, the right type of countermeasures. Then framework alignment. I have said about this in my earlier slides. Understand the leading practices of the industry and the frameworks that are available across the globe. For example, the NIST, which is supposed to be one of the most premier and prudent cybersecurity framework. Tailor the frameworks, identify where exactly it will fit into your organization, work with the CISO to find a patch for such frameworks in the organization, align cyber audit to the framework, example ISO or NIST or cybersecurity framework, etc., etc. Emerging risk and threat. Then, given the technology the organization is pursuing, whether it is a cloud related technology or a homegrown server or a hybrid cloud technology, whatever may be the technology, understand what are the threats and vulnerabilities in relation to the industry, in relation to your company, and build a strong digital cyber framework. And that will need to be done by going through the digital, cyber, automation, and cloud adoption risks. Prioritize the risk areas where you would first get into in terms of a countermeasure. And lastly, talent and staffing. As I said already, it is paramount that cybersecurity is not a university study or a textbook study. It will have to be through an experience, learning, and therefore internal audit will need to develop talent in cybersecurity, develop talent in cybersecurity audit, cybersecurity technologies, and recalibrate your audit plan in that process. In a cyber risk assessment, what could be the possible roles? I have mentioned out. I will broadly touch upon this. There are essentially planning, scoping is the first phase where you need to understand what exactly is the type of the organization. How would you make specific IT compliance and legal related frameworks? What are the deliverables that are going to be arising out of it? And understand the current state where the organization has got in relation to cyber related attacks, cyber related issues, and what are the current state and environment of the organization's cyber weaknesses, cyber unpreparedness, and assess what would be the type of risk that would come into the organization, that would get into the organization, document the certain amount of documentation, certain amount of working along with the CISO, collaborating with the subject matter specialist and with the management team, strategy team, etc. Identify the likelihood of the impact, risk, and prioritize the actions. And your deliverable in that would be the ranking of the priorities and capability assessment report to the organization. Lastly, when you attempt a gap assessment and recommendation, keep in mind what is the type of capability assessment results that you are going to give to the organization and what these assessment results would mean to the organization. Review them with the organization's experts, organization's in-house team, and ensure that the maturity that is looked at or expected out of the cyber risk assessment is driven correctly in the capability assessment report and is touched upon without any gap or without any letter. As a deliverable, the internal auditor would be expected to provide maturity analysis report, assessment scorecard, remediation and recommendation measures, and cyber security audit plan to the organization. Again, continuing on that, a cyber security risk assessment framework would involve cyber security governance, inventory of information assets, take out the list of all the information assets, and structure them into data, infrastructure, and applications, and find out where exactly they are located, what type of risk are placed against each of these as information assets according to location, according to the type of the device in which they are located, whether it is in the server or in the cloud, and then identify what are all the standard security configurations that need to be looked into in respect of the information assets, and perform an information access management review. Access management is the most critical in terms of an information cyber security information governance, and provide a prompt response and remediation plan. In respect of this, I am touching 4 major items in the next slide. One are a security framework, a second a technical solution, and security operations, assessment and compliance. In terms of a security framework, design, revision of cyber security strategy and program, defining the implementation of data classification, which is very important for many of the information assets, and cyber security policies, procedures. How would you like them to be in line with the information assets, their locations, their residence, etc. In terms of a technical solution, obviously internal audit will need to look into the expert subject matter specialist and the CISO, particularly in terms of a network security monitoring architecture, where it is something like a software defined perimeter or IPS related, etc., etc. SIEM is one of the most important tool that is being looked at in the current context. And how do you enhance the application security code and the review thereof? Vulnerability scan, penetration testing, though they are not going to be done directly by internal audit, they can direct them through the CISO or through the designated agencies and authorities. And in terms of security operation, a continuous security monitoring, cyber security incident analysis. If required, the internal audit can also take the role of a cyber security forensic investigator. Nothing prevents them from doing that. All that is required is that internal audit should possess the right talent framework to be a cyber security forensic investigator, and security awareness training, provided the internal audit have got the arsenal to provide the security awareness training to all the people. And lastly, assessment and compliance, what type of framework, which I have already mentioned. In terms of what risk governance internal audit can do, there are 6 major roles. One is leadership and governance. What the board is expecting from you in terms of due diligence, ownership, effective management of the risk. Look into these aspects. Human factors, as I said, the level of integration of a security culture in the organization. What type of skill measures while working from home? What type of exposures are there in terms of working from home or remote working? Such human factors will need to be evaluated by internal audit through continuous monitoring reviews and measures. And then information risk management, how to achieve comprehensive effective risk management of information throughout the organization, and delivery and supply partners. Here comes a very important part, namely third party risk management, third party systems, about which I didn't touch upon earlier. Third party risk management becomes a very important part of the when I say risk management, it is information risk management, because of the fact that for every organization you would allow your customers to integrate into a system while looking into your payment, their payments, etc. You would allow your suppliers and service providers to upload their invoices, to upload their ASN and other documents. Therefore, there is every possibility of a third party interface into your technology systems. Hence, the third party risk management becomes very critical for every organization, and that role is one which is best suited for internal audit in terms of a risk governance. Business continuity and risk management, crisis risk management, which is essentially the role of internal audit. Operations and technology, the right type of technology, support architecture, which again would be a subject matter specialist driven role, and internal audit would need to look into how they can work along with the subject matter specialist. Lastly, legal and compliance, what type of regulatory international certifications and standard requirements are there, and how internal audit can effectively get into that is another major aspect. And how the internal audit can integrate in the internal audit plan is what there are. This is essentially from a SOX perspective. This can be modified. As I have said, the role for internal audit would be financial controls testing, internal control testing, external penetration and vulnerability testing, internal vulnerability testing, business continuity plan, BCP or disaster recovery plan, data protection, information security, third party risk management, risk analysis. Everything is there. You can look into these requirements. Were not all in the same year, in year 1, year 2, year 3, and these are prescribed as essentially as the major cyber security related exercises to be undertaken by internal audit periodically. And now we come to one important aspect, namely the LOD action by internal audit. what internal audit can do in terms of a third line of defense action. One is that internal audit should need to look into how they can strengthen the organization's information technology risk security framework. Two, from a CAE perspective, the head of the internal audit perspective, one factor that comes in place is how the IT and cyber security risks are understood and monitored at the strategy level. That is to say that when I build new system or new business model, how would I need to ensure that my IT and cyber security risks are understood by the strategy fixers and planners? That is one role which internal audit would need to look into from a third line of defense perspective. And how the data travels. Data is not one that is standing static. Data will be in motion, data can be at rest, and data can be in usage. Usage will be at the premises or in the organization. Data at rest would be something like what permanent storage, and data in transmission can be from one device to another device, or from one system to another system, or one interface to another interface. In all these things, the role of internal audit is quite extraordinary, very important, in the sense that they would need to understand what type of measures will need to be taken if it is in a cloud framework, or if it is in a server-based framework, or in a hybrid, etc. And remain vigilant. Which very important is the fact is that what type of fraud detection and fraud prevention measures the company would need to be very clear about in a vulnerability exercise. Sir, can I take another about 10 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of third line of defense, there are two other aspects which I would like to say. How internal audit can align with the management and what type of independent actions they can take. Run an experience health check. Very important. As I said, arising out of the organization and industry experiences in terms of cybersecurity attacks and cybersecurity related incidents, internal audit would need to look at health check for its own organization, system design for the current needs, and then run an innovation workshop to rapidly innovate the system architecture. This, the CISO, the CEO, CAE, and the CFO, along with the technical team, would need to run innovation workshop considering the most recent and current cybersecurity technology tools in the space of authentication, phishing scanner, and other and the like, and provide a gap analysis report. This, in my opinion, while aligning with the management, this innovation workshop is one thing which internal audit of the current generation can look into very avidly. Lastly, cyber incident risk response, which is definitely the IA's role, which they can go through key failures, key potential dangers which are emanating from an open system, etc. Independent action, they can act as they can add cyber security experts into the team and provide us cyber security expert technical guidance. Audit committee engagement. Periodically, independent internal audit can leverage their relationship with audit committee, provide the audit committee an update on what cyber security related incidents are happening, what type of issues are emanating to the organization, to the industry, and across the country also wherever it is required, and provide a top level information on cyber security to the audit committee. Technology risk evaluation. Whenever new technology is introduced, independently, internal audit can assess through its own experts as well as through subject matter experts from outside as to whether that type of technology would be better suited for the organization. Of course, the decision of internal audit is not going to be the one which is deciding here, but at the same time, an expert advice coming from internal audit would not be deficient. Lastly, seek new generation cyber testing tools. This requires a lot of study, awareness, current and contemporary tools searched by internal audit. That is to say, internal audit will need to be vigilant in terms of its understanding of the cyber testing tools. And being an organization where technology is predominant, it is definitely the endeavor of internal audit, every internal audit team, to understand the currentness of the cybersecurity tools, as well as what are the emerging tools across the industry, across the technology service providers. Then the next one is what it can do now and what it can do next in terms of a framework, audit plan. As I said, keep the cybersecurity risk as your major audit focus. Develop technology understanding. I have said enough on this. Conduct testing of contemporaneous of cyber risk frameworks. We have seen enough of it. This is becoming another important one. Develop constant management communication plan. Instead of depending on the CISO or CIO, internal audit can provide through its own periodic reports a management communication plan as to how the cyber security issues are emanating, what are the preventive capabilities of the organization, what type of countermeasures and combat measures the organization would need to take. These are all certain amount of a line of defense, third line of defense type of communication engagement the internal audit can always have with the management. And in the future, or rather in the immediate next 2 years or 1 year, internal audit can look into cybersecurity resilience process. They should be able to work with the CISO, CFO, and other management experts to build a cyber resiliency framework. This is not an easy process. It is a technically laden process, and therefore lot of role of internal audit, lot of energy of internal audit would need to be spent on this. Help management build cyber security. As I said earlier, stop more and what should be the objective? Stop more further attacks, find breaches faster, fix breaches faster by identifying and working on appropriate patch tools, reduce breach impact by deploying containment tools. That's why I said knowledge of contemporary cyber security risk management tools is very important for internal audit. And lastly, invest in household innovation and research. There are umpteen number of technologies that have come up, like artificial intelligence, security orchestration, automation, and response, which is called as a SOAR technology. These are all new technologies that have evolved. Keep an understanding of these technologies, build in-house innovation research in these technologies through the subject matter experts and CISO. And very important, these are all things which I already said. The role of internal audit through your focus would be protection, detection, and crisis planning and continuous improvement. How internal audit would need to do will be through, there are in a protection process, how will you protect your in-house devices, in-house data systems, in-house IT governance. In a detection process, IAA itself has given quite an amount of exhaustive test process or review process through its GTAG 16 data analytics and technologies, which provide quite an amount of intent and purposeful literature on what internal audit can do to improve the data security of the organization through data analytics, tags, and other data mining and other related automation processes. There are mostly the detection tools, and internal audit is quite capable of performing operations through detection tools. Crisis planning, both BCP as well as disaster recovery plan DRP, internal audit is quite well capable, and they need to work on robust measures for crisis planning, continuous improvement, again reviewing of the cybersecurity, cyber incident guide, cyber security policies and measures, cyber proofing the organization, how they can do. These are all continuous improvement measures which internal audit can have to focus. But while looking at it, there are certain key learnings which internal audit will need to also look into. Don't let over investing in protection and detection, very important, because of the fact that you will then under invest in response and recovery, because the more you concentrate on protection and detection, you may not know the side effects or the later effects through a how to come out of a response or a recovery process. So that is very important for internal audit. Understand the paradox in breach detections between cyber leaders and beginners. Is your organization a cyber leader or a cyber beginner? That is to say, in a CMM, cybersecurity maturity model, where do you place yourself? As against that, look into the breach detection system. So this becomes quite a technical issue. Internal audit's role is important. At the same time, collaboration for a breach detection with technical experts is also important for internal audit. Increase the board's confidence in cybersecurity oversight. I already said on this. Most important, engage the audit committee and board continuously. And lastly, take stock of changing cybersecurity landscape through your own surveillance, through your own monitoring measures. And I have already said in a recovery plan what internal audit would need to do: resolve the 5R. Remember the 5R in a recovery plan: resolve, resilience, return, reimagination, reform. In a resolve, what are the immediate challenges you need to address? In a resilience, what type of critical cybersecurity issues and challenges you need to take into consideration, and how do you build resilience in the organization? Return, how quickly after COVID or after any pandemic, after any crisis, the organization could come back to normalcy. Reimagination, what would be the next normal? And from this normal, how would I travel to the next one? That should be the spirit in which the reimagination process should be looked into by internal audit. Reform, have a clear and robust understanding about the regulatory and competitive environments, and build a regulatory framework that is suitable for a longer term. Last but not the least, key regulatory requirements. These are all from an US perspective which I have brought in here, but mostly they apply to many other nations and many other frameworks also. In US, the internal auditors and the organizations are expected to do these actions in terms of actions and disclosures in terms of cybersecurity. One, breach notification. They should notify within 72 hours. Information security program. Yeah, they should have they should have comprehensive written information security program based on the risk assessment. They should be disclosed in every organization's website. ERM integration. Every company's cybersecurity program or a cybersecurity risk program will have to be integrated to the organization's enterprise risk management program. Incident response plan. There shall be a written incident response plan displayed in the organization. And lastly, risk assessment. How would you do an annual risk assessment? How would you evaluate the effectiveness of the key control systems and procedures? These are all important disclosures in US environment, and precisely they become a very fundamental and critical role for internal audit to take upon. And having said that, what are the regulatory expectations from internal audit? The regulators expect from IA on cyber risk. Expectations of regulators will be that the companies will not only have data controls and processes in place, but they will also be able to prove that these controls and processes are happening within the environment. Very important. Given that there are 5 prescriptions given by the US regulatory authorities from a regulatory perspective: assist in the process of gathering documentary evidence and artifacts. The internal audit should be best suited to ensure that future evidences are, current evidences are available for a future risk recovery plan. Assist in the process of gathering, gathering evidences and artifacts that will be presented to regulators. Very important when the regulators call for that. educating and preparing the folks in the company that will be meeting with the regulators. Include this in your audit plan in the in respect of 1 to 3 above, that is the first 3. If a company brings in an outside party to do a readiness assessment mock audit, work with that outside party as they conduct the readiness or assessment or a mock audit. So essentially, these are the regulatory expectations from a US perspective from internal audit, and they apply with equal force to every nation. Lastly, what would be the summary role of an internal audit? We should look up internal audit in the context of cybersecurity risk management as innovator and agitator of the profession of internal audit. Innovator, technology adoption. Innovator as a with the ability to drive strategic transformation in the organization through cyber practices, disciplined cyber practices, innovating cyber resiliency measures, which is of course a medium-term effort by internal audit. Then disruptors of change agents for the organization. In what way? Capitalizing on a new normal which are dictated onto the organization, and in collaboration with the ecosystem partners provide a very stable cyber security risk framework for the organization. Bring in technology innovation in audit methodologies. That is where the disruption by internal audit would need to be very creative. Lastly, become disruptors within and outside your company, adding credence to both. And the third and the third but not the least important is agile and strategic creators of value to the organization. Successful internal auditors swim across the new normal because they have the ability to be patient, they have the ability to be resilient in such cases of new normals arising out of crisis, and fully aligned with the organizational value systems, showcase the talent model to others through their own in-house talent possibilities. Alignment is evidenced by internal audit, enabling value being embedded in the audit function. That is very important in respect of cybersecurity talent and resource. Therefore, by virtue of being a creator of value, internal audit would need to look within itself, would need to be very robust in terms of a talent storehouse. Very important. The talent storehouse of internal audit in terms of cybersecurity is what it will enable it to allay the fears of productivity, whether internal audit is capable to get into the technology domain in the next years. That is very important. I started with the question whether internal audit is capable for the next gen technology domain. I am now confident that being a strategic creator of value, internal audit can definitely create value over a long run in the technology domain. Thus, I would say that there is always a leap of faith, facing the future with confidence, and internal audit can provide a long-term organizational risk assurance. And I thank for the patient listening. I am now open to taking questions.
Thank you, sir. We have this one question from Harish Kale. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
audible.
Yes, sir. So the question is, how do I improve technically knowledge of my team in cybersecurity areas? There is a continuity to this. It says, is there any specific educational qualification available? And the next, continuity to this is there any website which gives us an example of cyber attacks experience in last 10 years?
Yeah, in fact, I have given a lot of things. I'll just go back in my slide.
Sure.
Here I have given, there are, in terms of protection, detection, crisis planning, and crisis continuous improvement, which are essentially the role of internal audit in terms of cybersecurity. We have specific designed course or a designed program available. There are National Association of Corporate Directors in its own cybersecurity protection or a cybersecurity wing is providing corporate executives and more particularly internal audit also. Internal audit is not excluded in that. In fact, I have worked for NACD in the earlier years. They provide online cybersecurity training in terms of these 4 processes. How internal audit would need to look into protection mechanisms in a cybersecurity framework, in a cybersecurity perspective. What are the detection tools which internal audit will need to look into? How the crisis planning will have to be done? How internal audit can look into the continuous improvement. I can write to, after getting into the full details, because I don't have it right now, I have to go back and forth. I will write to Mr. Vidyadharan the details, and Vidyadharan can circulate to all the team members, all the attendees of the conference today.
No, sir, not so far.
Okay.
Any
Time
questions?
is 8 o'clock. There are no more questions.
Yeah.
So I think PKR, thanks a lot for very, very comprehensive presentation, very exhaustive in nature, dotted with practical aspects and lot of take-home points. I profusely thank PK Ranganathan for this elaborate and illustrative presentation on cyber security and internal audit in the new world order. Thanks to all the attendees for gathering in large numbers and encouraging us. Thank you very much. Then we will meet up in yet another event. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all. Thank you, Menas. Thank you, sir, Vidyadharan, sir. And thank you
Yeah.
all the attendees, making me proud. Thank you.